For some reason, I've recreated a handful of Krispy Kreme's donuts at home, the last of which I did was the original glazed cream filled. That's a regular glazed donut with a hole just filled with cream around the outside. So in this video, I'm going to tackle the chocolate version of that. This is a donut that I've literally never seen in my life other than on advertisements. It's never been on the menu at my local Krispy Kreme, so I don't know what the lore is behind it, but it'll be the same idea as the original cream filled. I'm just going to make the filling chocolate. This recipe was supposed to be enough to make like 6 to 7 regular donuts, but I cut them a little smaller this time, so this made 11. Adjust the recipe accordingly. I'm starting with 180 mils or 3/4 of a cup of whole milk. I'm adding 30 milliliters or 2 tablespoons of water. Just going to heat that real quick in the microwave to 100 degrees Fahrenheit. And then I'll add in a half packet to a full packet of active dry yeast. I used about 5 grams. I stole a tiny bit of the 35 grams or 3 tablespoons of sugar that I already measured. Mix that together and let it sit until it becomes the frothy boy stage.
Hey, that's my line.
Sorry about that. Into the bowl of my stand mixer, I'm going to add 300 grams or 2.5 cups of all-purpose flour. The rest of that 35 grams of sugar, and then 3 grams or a half teaspoon of kosher salt. And as usual, an optional few seconds worth of grated nutmeg. Mix that with the dough hook by hand and then add in your frothy boy. Let that start to mix and come together, and then you can add in 1 egg. After that kind of forms a single mass, I'm going to add in 40 grams or a 1/4 cup of vegetable shortening. I seem to have longer lasting donuts when I add this instead of butter. Now just mix that on high speed to knead for about 10 minutes. If you notice it's too sticky midway through, you can add in some more flour if needed. But after mixing, you should have a tacky but not super sticky dough that passes the window pane test. I'll scoop this out to a greased bowl to cover and let rise for about 2 hours in a warm spot. Make sure that you tip your yeast for their hard work, and let's move on. I'm flouring up my clean countertop and then rolling this dough out to pretty thin. I'd say maybe like a 1/4 to a 1/2 inch because this is going to rise again after we cut it. And in the past, I would always use my Pelican's cup and seasoning lid to cut my donuts, but my friend Brandy sent me one of these 3-inch donut cutters a while back, so I can finally use it. Thanks, Brandy. I'm cutting as many donuts and holes out of this sheet that I can fit, and if you can, take all the scraps and fold it into itself until it becomes a ball. Let this rest under a towel for about 30 minutes to let the gluten relax before you recut. I placed the cut donuts onto some parchment squares because I like frying them that way now. I'm just sticking that on a baking sheet for its final proof under a towel for maybe 1 more hour. And when it's time to fry, I'm going to grab my Dutch oven and add my candy thermometer. I'm adding a few inches of used neutral oil that I've used before for donuts and other sweet things. Ideally, I want to fry between 325 and 350 Fahrenheit, so I'm going to let this get up to about 360. And then I'll add in the parchment squares of donuts. I prefer it this way now because you don't have to touch the donut and deflate it because of all the air that's risen into it. Once you add in 2 or 3 donuts, you can just take some tongs and grab the parchment paper out. I try to flip these every 30 seconds just to get even browning on both sides. Depending on how hot your oil is, they'll brown faster or slower.
That's it? What? Only depending on how hot the oil is? Bro, what about the size and girth of the donuts? Girth? What about the browning properties of the specific type of flour you use? Dude, since when do you know anything about science? Since when do you not know the intricacies of our biological existence on this celestial body? Are you reading all of that off your palm?
Just keep an eye on them. You don't want them to get too brown like some of mine did. I think they're usually done after a total of between 2 and 3 minutes. I remove them to a wire rack and then I'm going to quickly glaze them, which speaking of, I've already whipped up my vanilla glaze. Into 130 grams or 1 cup of powdered sugar, I'm going to add in 2 tablespoons of light corn syrup, then a teaspoon of vanilla extract and a pinch of salt. I like to add a few drops of lemon juice just to balance the sweetness. And then I'm going to add in whole milk till I get my desired consistency, which I like my donut glazes to be pretty thin and runny. I just like them to form a thin film around the donut, just a little bit of crunchy sweetness. This is about the consistency I ended up with. But anyway, just a few seconds after the donuts come out of the fryer, I'm going to add them into this glaze. It won't adhere as well if you do it when they're cold, so try to do this while they're still warm out of the fryer. I use a chopstick to interfere the least amount with the donut while I'm flipping it and coating it. And then once all the surface is coated, I'm going to take the donut out and let the excess drip off. Rest that on a wire rack and repeat with all the donuts. I let them sit for at least 20 minutes so the glaze can set, which I don't know why, but my glaze never fully set into a hard shell around the outside like it normally does. It was a little sweaty and glossy looking, which for me is not normal, even though I followed my normal process, so I'm not sure what happened. But while those are setting, we can make our chocolate cream filling. This is basically the same as the vanilla cream filling that I made for my last donut video. I'm just adding cocoa powder to it. First, into a sauce pot, I'm adding 50 grams or a 1/4 cup of sugar and 30 milliliters or 2 tablespoons of water. I'm going to swirl that over medium heat for a few minutes until the sugar dissolves. I'm just making a simple syrup. Then I can dump that into my stand mixer bowl, which by the way, you can do this by hand really easily. Then I'm adding 45 milliliters or 3 tablespoons of neutral oil, 30 more grams or 3 tablespoons of vegetable shortening, and 40 grams or 3 tablespoons of softened butter and a teaspoon of vanilla extract. Using the paddle attachment, I'm just going to whip all this together and try to break up the solids. And once it's at that stage, I have 200 grams or 1.5 cups of powdered sugar and 22 grams or 3 tablespoons of cocoa powder. I'm going to alternate adding those in just 1 spoonful at a time to incorporate them. And after a few minutes, once you get everything in there, I just whip this up for a few more seconds. You should get this nice, fluffy, light frosting consistency like this. It's not like a Bavarian cream, it's more like a whipped cream. I'm just going to scrape all this into a piping bag for easy filling for our donuts. So back at the donuts, the glaze should have set at this point, and I just need to make some room to fill them. And donuts with holes are a lot harder to fill than donuts without them. In my last video, I just made 2 holes at the bottom and tried to hollow out the middle from those holes. I didn't get full coverage of the filling that time, so this time I decided to make 4 holes. I'm just using my chopstick and carefully going back and forth in the hole to make it to the other hole. This should hollow out a pretty even amount of the donut so filling can be in most bites. So I'll take my piping bag and fill these from each hole. Just go until the filling starts peeping back at you out of that hole. I feel like these took a lot more filling than my last donuts did because I got to use all my filling this time. I turned these into some pretty hefty boys. Now, as a last little touch, they make these chocolate stripes on the outside of the donut, which I'm going to do as well. Into a small bowl, I'm just adding a few tablespoons of powdered sugar and a little pinch of cocoa powder. Then just enough whole milk to make this a really thick ganache style consistency. I want these lines to be set once I put them on, so it has to be pretty thick. You won't need a lot of this at all, by the way, so I'm just adding this to a small Ziploc bag. Just snip off the tiniest corner from it and then carefully add 3 lines of chocolate to each donut. Personally, if I'm filling a donut, I'm not going to make a whole donut because that makes it a lot harder to fill. But just for the sake of these videos, I'm trying to make these as close to the original as I can. Even though I've never tried or even seen the donut that I'm trying to copycat, I think this came out pretty close. I think the size of my donuts is better now that I'm using a 3-inch cutter instead of the 4-inch cup that I had before. Aside from the sweaty outside, I'm pretty pleased at how these turned out, and I'm ready to get to the taste test.
Of course I'm gonna vanilla milk. Not bad. I said this before in my regular original cream-filled donut video that I don't think these are really necessary. It's way more tedious to fill than a full donut because of the hole in the middle, but I guess it's just kind of a novelty item, so it is what it is. I don't know why my glaze looks sweaty like this. That usually doesn't happen until I let this sit for a day or 2. It didn't form that hard shell on the outside like you'd get at Krispy Kreme, for instance, but oh well. Let's see if this thing tastes any good. Cheers. Just about what you'd expect. A regular glazed donut with a nice chocolatey filling. Again, it's not like a custard, it's more of a whipped cream texture. And again, still not 100% coverage on the inside, but it's way better than the last iteration I had. So doing the 4 corners is definitely better. So I guess just something to impress your friends or just to copycat the recipe if you really want to. Like I said, I've never been able to find this at a Krispy Kreme near me. It's never even on the menu, so I don't know what's going on with that. But I would probably never make this again. I'm only doing this because of the series that I have. Let me know what donuts I should try next from Krispy Kreme. I think this is my 5th one. Blueberry cake, cake batter, original cream filled, Biscoff cheesecake, and this one. But that's gonna do it for me today. Thank you all for watching, be blessed, and I'll see you next time. Nice.